Hello and welcome to Willow's Green Permaculture. Now for this mid-March to mid-April or late April harvest, fantastic, very healthy. It is so delicious, but you need gloves to harvest it because the little animals don't like it. You know, they recognize it and keep a good distance from it. And so I'm gonna test that out and see how that works. It's late April. And there's a lot going on in the greenhouse and in the garden. Thinning out the cabbage with all sorts of vegetable starts and thinning to do. Work in the forest still going on. This time of year though, I really love to watch the forest come alive. In today's video, I'd like to talk to you about some of the important plants to have in your food forest so that you can have some fresh vegetables, some fresh greens in early spring when you're still waiting for some of the other stuff to come up. I'm going to talk to you about some of the vegetables that can come back every year. And because of that, they're among the first ones available in early spring. Throughout the season, I'm going to talk to you about different food forest plants. But right now, because this is what's growing, I'm going to talk to you about the early spring harvests. So today, we're going to go out and harvest some vegetables. And I'm going to show you those food forest items that are good so that you can be eating at least in a zone 5 or warmer in late March and early April and late April and so on. You can be already eating fresh food from the garden, from outside, in your kitchen. So let's get started. So, when working on a food forest, it's important to plant species that you're gonna be able to plant just once, and they'll come back every year, basically forever, and that they'll feed you every year, basically forever. And a bonus is if those plants can play more than one role in your garden. And so I'll give you an example. Perfect example of a food forest species is sorrel. I have also heard this called lemon spinach in the United States, but it's called sorrel or French sorrel, and it's a green that's ready depending on where you are. Here in zone 5 in Ontario, this is ready in late March, early April. So what I'm going to be doing today is a late March, early April, mid-April harvest. Today it's actually April 19th. So this is really good. Tastes like lemon. So sorrel will not only feed you, you can add it to salads in early spring when you're really waiting for something fresh and green. But also because of its lemony flavor, a lot of animals don't like it. And so it's good as a companion plant because it helps mask the flavors and aromas of the vegetables that the little animals might be after, the insects might be after. And a third role it plays is, well, 4 roles actually, because it's going to grow and it's going to have beautiful flowers. Well, so it's going to have thousands of beautiful flowers. It's going to attract pollinators. And then it's going to go to seed, and the thousands and thousands of seeds that it produces, you can either keep and use to regrow it elsewhere, or you can harvest those seeds and make them into a flour, add them to your regular flour for different flavors and extra fiber and a little extra protein, because they give a ton of seeds. You'll always have way more seed than you need. So this is sorrel. Now for this mid-March to mid-April or late April harvest that I'm doing here, even early May, what I'm going to need is different tools for different vegetables. So I need a little trowel here. I need a little pair of scissors, maybe, or maybe not. This is a little basket to separate something that I'm going to be harvesting a little later, and obviously a bucket to put everything in. The sorrel is real easy though, because this stuff grows, is a very strong plant. So to harvest it, all you really need to do is just pull the leaves like this, because it's going to replace these leaves in a couple days. They're going to start growing again. And so I've got about 6 or 7 bunches of sorrel here. Like you can see one there, you can see one here, but there are more. So, you know, every couple days I'll come out and I will harvest a whole bunch of sorrel from one of these bunches. And I'll keep doing this all spring till maybe like sometime in June when we start getting other greens. And then at that point I'll just let it go. And then it's gonna grow this big, and the flowers are gonna be up to here, and it's gonna have a ton of seed and so on. And so this way as well, by picking this like this, not only am I getting food, but I'm also allowing the other plants around it to get more sunlight, etc. So here I've harvested about 1/3 of this basket already, which is plenty to add to a salad this afternoon. I'll take a bit more. There are 4 of us. So, but that's really, really delicious. So sorrel is one. We've got a lot of oregano growing here, but it's not totally developed yet, as in it's, you know, it hasn't really started growing thickly like tall yet. So it's very close to the ground still right now at this point in the year. So I'm just going to take a little bit with my scissors. I don't want to pull it, because the thing with you see, sorrel is very strong, very strong roots, so you can just pull those leaves. But if I were to pull at the oregano, then I'll pull up the stem, and the stem, all along the stem, it grows roots if the stem is touching the ground, which makes the plant spread and get bigger. So if I were to pull the leaves, I'd pull those stems and those little tiny new roots that are growing, and I don't want to do that because I want my oregano to spread. I want it to spread to this whole section, because you see this whole section here is one of my food forest sections. And what I mean by that, it's full of stuff that's gonna keep coming back. Over here, you can't see it. Well, there's one onion here, but there are a whole bunch of onions over here that come back every year, some green onions. These aren't the walking onions. I'll show you those later. We've got some evening primrose, which is really nice. I'm not gonna harvest that right now. I already did harvest the root, and I left a little bit of the root in there, and so it's starting to grow back. And so all I'm really harvesting in this area is the oregano and the sorrel, and I'm gonna harvest a few of these onions. For instance, you can see this one. It's got 2 big leaves, 3 big leaves. I'm gonna harvest one of them, okay, for now, because it's still small, that plant. But I'll show you some other onions where I can harvest some more. So now we're going to go to another part of the garden and do some more harvesting. Actually, I didn't have to move much. I just took my stick and moved the camera. It's on the other side of me here. Sorry about these sticks that are actually, I don't need all these in here. Some of these sticks blocking the way. They've been there since last year. So these are just some regular green onions that have been here for a few years, and this one wants to go to seed, but I don't need the seeds yet. So basically, with the onions in the early spring, I will take it. If there are 2 leaves, I'll take one of them, harvest it, and let the other one continue to grow, and then it'll start putting up other leaves, and so on. And then once again, in about June, I will stop harvesting them. Now, I've harvested these onions several times, so I need to let them conserve their energy. I've got some more over here, but it's the walking onions I want to show you. Oh, now here is something. Here's another plant growing here that's really important for your food forest. And I need a trowel to harvest it because I want to harvest the root. It's got a nice deep root. Here it is. So probably recognize it. This is dandelion. I'm actually not going to put it in the basket here, in the pail, because it's all dirty. It's going to need to be washed. I'm harvesting this because I want to eat the leaves. It's just starting to develop a bud here. Once that bud starts to grow up, then the leaves are going to stop being sweet, because that's the flower bud and all the energy's going into there. But I want to harvest this because I'm going to add these leaves to the salad, really healthy. And I'm harvesting the root because I want to roast this root and make a powder out of it with a blender, and roast it, dry it, make a powder out of it. And apparently I can use that powder like you would use any type of powdered coffee, like granulated coffee, and make a coffee tasting drink out of it, except that it would be non-caffeinated. Apparently it's really delicious, really healthy. Apparently it's good to mix chicory root with that too. I've got chicory growing, there's none here. But I'm going to give that a try for the first time this year. I'm going to see how that is. So so there you go. Dandelion is another one of these plants that play several roles, because you can harvest the root, make the drink out of it. You can harvest the leaves, put them in a salad. They're really good in early spring. And the flowers, when they bloom, when they just start to bloom and they're nice and yellow and you got a lot of bees coming to them and so on, they're full of pollen, they're full of nectar. You harvest those flowers, you put them in water, you stuff as many flowers in the water as you can in a little jar, and you let that sit for 24 hours, and then you strain that water, add some sugar to it, boil it down a little, and what you're going to get is something called dandelion honey. And there's nothing better. It tastes just like honey, because basically you're kind of imitating what the bees do, except that obviously you're not putting it through your body. Apparently honey has to go through the bee's body and so on to produce it. I'm not sure of the process. And a fourth benefit of dandelion is, if I were to just take these leaves and put them at the base of my plants as a mulch, sort of like comfrey, these leaves are full of nutrients, because the dandelion taproot goes really deep, a lot deeper than most vegetable roots go. So it's going to have a lot of nutrients, a lot of minerals and so on that the vegetables don't have access to. And so these leaves can feed those plants by decomposing at the base of the plant, preventing other weeds from growing, and giving all that energy and all those nutrients to the plants, the vegetables growing around. So dandelion is really one of those super plants. I got a couple of them here that I'd like to harvest. Here's another one. And I'm harvesting the roots because, like I said, I want to give that a try. Make that drink. I'm going to try that for the first time this year. So I'll keep you posted. Here's another one. And by the way, whenever you're harvesting roots, especially early spring for these perennials is the best time, evening primrose as well. It's quite easy in early spring because the earth is very soft and damp, and it's a rainy day today, so it's also a good day, not only because it's easier to harvest because the soil is damp, but also, you know, I don't have to worry about putting this in water while I'm outside, because it's not going to fry in the sun, because we're in the shade, we're under the water, and so on. So there you go. Now we're going to go to another part of the garden. I've got some more dandelion right here in my path, so growing in the mulch, through the mulch. So we don't need this here, so I'm going to see if I can get some of this out of here. It's a little harder because there's a very thick layer of mulch here. If I can't get the root out, well, at least I can use the leaves. I got some root, that's not bad, but all these leaves I can use. These dandelions are going to start blooming soon. And when they start blooming, then we don't use the leaves anymore to eat. And we've got other stuff ready in the garden. There we go. That's just leaves. Got some kale growing here, mustard. Okay, so around here, this is another one of our perennial vegetable garden areas where we have stuff that comes back every year and where I'm adding more and more. For example, right here, you may not see them, but there's some red lettuce all through here between all these onions. And this red lettuce, we're gonna harvest it, but without pulling the roots of the plants when it's ready, so that after we harvest it, the plant starts to regrow again. And we might get a second harvest or maybe not, but eventually what we want is for it to go to flower and go to seed, and then those seeds will stay there right through the fall, dry up, fall through the winter, and you know, they'll still the towers of seeds will still be there in the early spring, and the seeds will survive the winter, and they will have germinated in March, and we'll be able to have lettuce in April that we can harvest along with the onions and the other things that I'm going to show you here. So that's one thing. And then here's another one. Well, here's, like I said earlier, here's some more dandelion. This I'm just going to harvest the leaves from this. Real easy. These are nice and clean. I'm just going to put them in here. Easy to wash later. And the next thing I'm going to harvest, and I need a little basket for this. This is what I was telling you about. And I'm going to need my gloves for this, because the next plant I'm going to tell you about is stinging nettle. Stinging nettle is fantastic, very healthy. It is so delicious, but you need gloves to harvest it. You need gloves to harvest it because otherwise it stings. So you use gloves to harvest it, but then once you put it in water, and you start to, you know, steam it or boil it, it'll be good. So using my gloves, I'm just gonna take this, and that's why I'm putting it in this little basket, so that it's easily distinguishable in the kitchen. So no one gets stung in the kitchen when we're processing this stinging nettle, but it is so good. And I'm gonna stuff as much in here as I can, because once again, stinging nettle is one of the first things that appears in the spring, and I can cut this right down to the soil, and it's just gonna come right back up. In fact, the deeper I cut it, the better, because otherwise it will become much bigger than all these onions, and I want the onions to grow. So I'm gonna keep harvesting this, and it's so delicious. Really it is. So there, you can almost not see it anymore. I've almost filled this. I've stuffed it in this little basket. Now I can put this in here, and it's not gonna get mixed up with the other plants. Now another one of the plants that is so good for a food forest are walking onions. I've probably talked about these before. I'll talk about them later in the season when they're much bigger, because they grow like this. This plant's gonna be like this big and this tall. Walking onions are wonderful because they come back every year. And what's gonna happen is these are gonna grow really tall, and sometime in July and August, the tops are gonna be full of little onions that are about the size of a large grape. And you can harvest those and eat them, or you can harvest them to plant them elsewhere, because really most of the harvesting we do of these Egyptian onions are the greens, because we can harvest them from March right up until the end of June. These greens have a constant supply of green onions, and then we let them finish growing. We let them we let those onions develop. In August we'll harvest those onions, and then in the fall we let the greens grow again, and we can harvest them again. Not as much in the fall, but we can harvest some of the greens in the fall, because we want the plant to collect its energy for the winter. And so here's how I harvest the walking onions, like the onions earlier. So each stem's got a whole bunch of greens on it. I will harvest one or two stems off the one or two leaves off the stem. Make sure there's at least one left on each stem, so that the plant can keep growing. You know, and each one of these has at least one stem, if not two, on them. And so there, and that one plant that gave me all these green onions, but I've got like about 50 plants or so here that are already this size that I can harvest from. And so that's a really wonderful thing to have. So here we got dandelion, lettuce, and walking onions that will grow every year. And they're called walking onions, by the way, because they get really tall, and those onions that are at the end of those stems, when they get big and heavy, the stem falls down, the onion takes root, and then about 2 feet later, well, you've got another onion plant growing. So it's like it's taken a step. And over here we have some wormwood. Now wormwood, we don't eat it. Apparently it can be used as a tea or a tincture or something if you have worms or something. But anyway, I'm not exactly sure how that works. I just like how it smells, and it's a repellent for the bugs and pests and stuff like that. So that's really nice. And another thing that's good to have in your garden is a lot of vertical stuff, because I'm looking over there and there was a bird hanging out on one of our sticks here that we have in the garden. Birds hang out on these vertical either trellises or sticks or teepees that we put in the garden. They check out what's going on in the garden, and they eat the bugs and so on that are there. So that's really nice. Another plant that's great to have in the garden that's right over here. This is curly dock. Okay, curly dock, which is a cousin to the French sorrel that I showed you over there, the lemon spinach. It's edible, not as sweet as the curly dock. I mean, not as sweet as the sorrel, but it's in the same family of the sorrel. Actually, it's kind of sweet because it's early spring, but it's also a little bitter. But the great thing about this curly dock is, if I get a bee sting, I take a few leaves like this and I rub it on the bee sting, and then immediately the pain goes away within like 30 seconds. It's quite something. Now, there are no bees right now. They're going to show up later, I guess. So that's it for this part of the garden. And I think, so I got a bunch of dandelion. I've got some onion and some nettles and some sorrel. Inside I've got thinnings from cabbage that I thinned in the greenhouse. And I think that's it for today. I might go get some lemon balm over there, we'll see. So earlier I was telling you about the stinging nettle. Not only is it good to eat, but it's good to have in the garden because the little animals don't like it. Just like it stings us, it stings them too. So it helps protect, and you know they recognize it and keep a good distance from it. You know, the animals are a lot smarter than we are when it comes to what's in the garden and what they need to avoid, etc. They recognize it a lot faster than we do. Here we have some lemon balm, which I'm going to use, or some kind of lemon mint. Yeah, lemon balm or lemon mint. It's one or the other. I'm not sure the difference between the two. I'm hoping this works as lemon balm to attract honeybees to our honeybee hive over there. We'll see. I've got a bunch of this lemon balm growing over there. But once again, lemon balm and everything in the mint family is good to have around the garden because it's going to repel the insects as well. And it comes back every year like everything else. It's good to make a tea with. It's good in salads. So I'm just going to take a bunch now. You don't need much to flavor a salad, and you also don't need much to get all the benefits from it. So healthy for you, full of vitamins. And like I said, it comes back every year. So that's the idea of a food forest, is to have a whole bunch of plants that come back every year. Eventually, I'd like everything to come back you know, every year by just letting it self-seed. I'm going to find out every year the kinds of plants that self-seed. There's some plants that take 2 years before they grow their seed, like for instance broccoli. So something like that, if you set up your broccoli on a 2-year cycle, and what I mean by that is you plant broccoli 1 year and you harvest what you need, and you try and make at least one of your plants over winter to produce its seed the next year. and then it's going to produce hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of seeds. And you let some of those fall to self-seed that year so that it grows again. And you also plant some other broccoli for that year that you can harvest. And then that year again, you let some stay until the following year. And then what you're going to have is you're going to have a constant supply of broccoli that's going to go to flower and go to seed each year. So you're going to have a bunch that's going to grow that you can harvest, and a bunch that is growing into flower. And so those that are flowering, they're going to make the broccoli that's going to grow next year. And those that aren't flowering that you're harvesting, well, that's what you eat. And so I'm gonna test that out and see how that works. And right over there on the other side of this bed here, you can probably see it coming up. That's some rhubarb. It's about almost 30 centimeters high, almost a foot high already. We're in mid-April, April 19th, and it's doing really well. That's another species that's good for food for us because it comes back every year. We've got this one, and we have two others that aren't in the garden that are also growing. Really nice to have. And the thing about rhubarb is, if you want it to be a good and strong plant, when you see its flower spikes start to grow, then you should cut those out. And that way the plant can concentrate on growing lots and lots of stems of rhubarb and leaves of rhubarb. And then those leaves are going to collect a lot of energy for the roots. And then you can harvest it several times in the spring and early summer. And then by about midsummer, I'll stop harvesting it to let a lot of rhubarb leaves grow so that the roots can gather a lot of energy for the winter. Now, after I've had my rhubarb for several years, and maybe, like I said, I've got three of them, three bunches of them, I'd like to let at least one of them go to flower. Not that I need the seeds, because it's easier to divide the roots of rhubarb if you want to have more of it. But I just find it pretty when rhubarb flowers. But the year that you let a bunch of rhubarb flower, you're not going to get as much rhubarb out of it. But it's pretty, and it's really tall, and it's impressive. It's almost like you know, when the agave plant flowers. You know, it's quite impressive. I don't think the plant actually dies like the agave after it flowers and goes to seed, but it certainly does set it back a little, I think. Here's another great food forest item, the whole brassica family. So here we got some purple Russian kale that we planted from homegrown seeds. So we've had our kale grow seeds for us many years now, 3-4 years now. And it's real easy. It grows its seeds in its second year, so it overwinters, it survives the winter. So we planted some kale from seed here last year, and we harvested it, but we left the plant in place. We just harvested the leaves, and it survived the winter under all this nice thick leaf mulch here. And here it is growing again this year. So we're going to harvest some of the leaves now in the early spring, which is really nice to have some kale leaves. But then later on in the spring, it's going to go to flower, and we're going to let it go to flower so we can get, again, some fresh seed, so that in the next couple of years we can keep reseeding it. But it's really nice because, once again, we're mid-April, and we got some kale. Because if you're just putting your kale seed in now, well, it's just sprouting right now, you know. And so it's nice to have stuff that's ready to eat. Now, I'm not going to take everything here because I want the plant to keep growing, so I'm going to leave most of its central leaves there. Just take a few. We got a couple more over here and a few more over there, but really nice. So once again, another great plant for the food forest, because once again, you see, we let this grow, we let it go to seed, we'll collect the seed, but also lots of seed will just fall. Now we're planting some kale already, and so it's going to be elsewhere. We're going to harvest that, and we're going to let it overwinter so that next year there's seed, you see. And so there's always replacement, and which means as the kale overwinters, especially the stuff that you let go to seed in place, it's adapted for the place, and so it's going to overwinter and keep and keep producing, which means every year you can have kale that grows on its own. And that, once again, that's the idea of the food forest, for your food to grow on its own. So kale is a great one to have, and this year we're going to see if we can do that with some broccoli. We've done it with beets and with Swiss chard. I've got some growing in the greenhouse from our seed that we got last year, and kale's another one. So there you go. I think we've done our food forest harvest for the day. So we harvested some lemon balm, we harvested some walking onions, we harvested some sorrel, we harvested some oregano, and we harvested some dandelion. And we checked up on the lettuce, it's not ready yet. Checked up on the rhubarb, it's not ready yet. And then for another video, we'll show you more of the stuff that we like to keep growing every year. So I hope you liked the video. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe. Support our channel just by subscribing. Give it a like, share it. Share the video if you find the information useful. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.